All right, thank you, and welcome to a highly anticipated show here Thursday evening. Our regular time slot for Planet Valenti Television, but an unusual format as we present our venture into Campaign 15. I'm Dan Valenti, and we didn't have Dawes Butler with a booming introduction. We did not have the wild applause. In fact, we told people who are here, our vast studio audience, that if there was a peep out of them or a hand signal, they would be taken out back and shot. So that won't happen. We are going to spend the rest of the hour with the two candidates that want to be your next mayor. We'll introduce those in a moment. And let me just say a brief word about format or lack of. I've been avoiding the word debate, and I'm trying to encourage conversation and dialogue between our two candidates, the incumbent mayor, Dan Bianchi, and the challenger, Linda Tyer. We have a watch on us, but we've thrown out the debate time clock, and we are avoiding as many artificialities as we can in hopes to draw out discussions and maybe venture into areas and discussions of topics previously covered but haven't been vetted fully. So we'll see how it goes, and let me at this time, first of all, welcome our two candidates. The incumbent mayor needs no introduction, a 10-year councilman in Ward 6. He has been the mayor for the last 2 terms, seeking to become the first 4-year mayor in city history, which will be his 3rd term. Dan Bianchi. Dan, thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan.
And he is opposed, of course, by Linda Tyer. She is currently the city clerk, previously had been a councilor in Ward 2. And Linda, again, appreciate you coming in and doing this with us.
Thank you. It's good to be here, but it was Ward 3 I represented.
Ward 3.
That's right.
Check that. All right. That's
right.
my first mistake of the night. It won't be the last, I hope. But so let's get going with it. And let me start with a question for you, Linda. You know, when you look at Dan Bianchi's record, one thing that is immediately apparent is a vast amount of executive experience in the dreaded private sector for decades. As mayor, as CEO for 4 years, we look at yours, and with all due respect, it's paltry by comparison. You served as a secretary for the Lenox School Department. You came to Pittsfield. You have not run a city. You run a department, but that's not the same thing. Why would that objective third-party visitor, the guy who comes in from Mars and wants to cast a vote here, he's moved to Pittsfield, why would they, what's the logical fact-based reason why he or she selects you as the executive over all of this experience?
Well, I appreciate the question, and thank you very much. As you know, and as you mentioned earlier, I served as an elected official, as a member of the Pittsfield City Council, and it was a privilege to represent Ward 3. During my tenure representing Ward 3, I provided excellent constituent services.
Linda, you weren't the executive. You were the legislative branch. I'm just saying executive experience.
Right. Well,
would
again,
you at least grant that your track record or your resume, your CV, as it were, cannot match your opponents as far as executive experience?
I would concede that point. However, I believe that there are other qualifications that many people bring to their service, to their city, that qualify them to be the mayor of the city of Pittsfield.
Give me 3.
I think that the right temperament of building collaborations and partnerships is an important qualification. I think being well connected to the community and understanding and listening to the needs of the people of Pittsfield. And I also think that the right sort of temperament and demeanor in terms of how we represent each other in our community is an important qualification.
So you think that's enough of a basis to make a vote for you? You just throw all of that out. Dan, I would guess you would.
I would also add that you know, anyone who is an executive of an organization also brings around them the areas of expertise that are needed in order to supplement.
There's nodding in agreement. Has he not done that? Dan.
Well, once again, you're talking about an executive of an organization. You don't have that experience. You know, municipal government has become so complex we're talking about a $145 million budget. We're talking about hundreds of employees. It's very complex. We have, I think, in the neighborhood of 10 or 11 unions. We have complex contracts. We sit down across the table from some very powerful people. We have to be able to negotiate. We have to be able to operate on the same level that they do. And I think that it is critically important today, especially today, that you have to have somebody with qualification and experience.
Dan, do you think you took your years in the private sector, were you able to transfer some of those practices to government? Do you think you've successfully done that?
Oh yeah, absolutely, Dan. First of all, I spent the first 10 years of my career building, managing hundreds of millions of dollars in budgets. That's what I did. And that, to a great extent.
Is this for Global Energy?
No, this is for the Berkshire Gas Company, locally owned,
Okay.
but a Fortune 500
When
company.
did you join Global?
I joined Global in the early 90s.
Are you still working
93.
for them?
I spent about, this came up in another debate, I spent about 5 to 6 hours a month, Dan.
Do you have a, where is your office?
I don't have one. I have a
You work
laptop.
out of the house?
I have a laptop.
You need an
yeah.
office today, I guess.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
no. So I spent about 5 to 6 hours a month, and I know, and that's one of the most frustrating things about a campaign: rumors, innuendos, and lies. And
Can you give us an example of a lie that you want now to address
absolutely,
face-to-face to Linda Tyer?
Absolutely, and I confronted a city councilor because he had the misfortune of telling a friend of mine, oh, Bianchi doesn't have meetings, doesn't have, his schedule is free on Monday and Friday because he's doing his other job. Couldn't be further from the truth. And when I confronted him with it, he turned a bright shade of red, and I told him that my schedule is open to anyone. As a matter of fact, Councilor Claremont has gotten 1 year's worth of my, he demanded 1 year's worth of my schedules, and I believe he received them.
Are you satisfied with that? Because I know you brought up the issue of, and implied that Dan Bianchi is not a full-time mayor. You said, I will be a full-time mayor. Are you buying what he just said?
Well, I think that that's an important point. I think when the people of Pittsfield elect you and give you the privilege of serving them, it is a very important position to have been granted the privilege of serving, and it should be done on a full-time basis. As Mayor Bianchi stated earlier, municipal government is complex. There are many, many things that need to be managed on a day-to-day basis. And I do believe strongly that in this day and age of complex municipal government, that the person who is in the position of mayor should be full-time.
So you're saying he's not, could you back that up factually?
Well, I think he's acknowledged that he's working another job.
Well, he said he worked
5 to 6 hours a week. And
That's, you know,
Dan, I will match my work effort and my schedule against my opponents, and that includes personal time if she'd like to do that, how I spend that compared to how she spends hers. It's, you know, you're expecting someone to be able to just do nothing other than be mayor, and that's unrealistic. People do have lives. And to spend 5 to 6 hours doing something else on my own time at 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning on a weekend, I think certainly has in no way interfered with my 7-day-a-week job as mayor.
Correct me if I'm wrong,
Sure.
but I don't believe the city charter, we still call it the new city charter, it's not new anymore, but I don't think it defines the duties of the mayor.
The new city charter, and this was a conversation that the Charter Commission had.
Does
and
it say you have to put in X number of hours?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. They say that you have to be, you know, and I don't even know the exact language. I'd be kidding you if I did. But I know that it was a conversation that they had, and it was a thoughtful one. And they said, you know, what if you have an attorney in the mayor's office? Are you going to suggest that he can't do a will or he can't have a closing for a family member? What if he has rental property? Does he have to dispense with that? We've had mayors who've had restaurants. We've, you know, had mayors who have had
does all of that
law
satisfy
practices.
you, Linda?
Well, the charter does not indicate anything about the number of hours that a mayor needs to work, or it doesn't preclude the mayor from having an outside job. I just happen to believe that it's important for the mayor to be full-time, to not be distracted by any sort of outside interests. Again, this is an important responsibility. It is a privilege that you are given to serve by the voters of the city of Pittsfield. There is a significant amount of compensation given, and I just believe that for me and for my choice, I will be a full-time mayor and won't have any outside employment.
Let me ask you an executive type question. Do you know what OPEB stands for?
Yes, I do.
Can you tell us?
It stands for Other Post-Employment Benefits.
Is it a problem that the city
Yes,
faces?
it absolutely is a problem.
Will you address that as mayor?
Yes, of
How
course.
will you address that?
We have established a committee that is responsible for assessing and evaluating what the OPEB liabilities are. We must continue to provide funds in each municipal budget to begin chipping away at that unfunded liability.
Will Pittsfield end up as Detroit? Detroit said the
No.
same thing all the way along.
No.
And then it had to go into the courts and renegotiate pension reform. Would you be willing to look at that?
I don't believe that the city is anywhere near the level of bankruptcy. I think we also have to rely on the Commonwealth to assist all cities and towns to begin addressing this unfunded liability.
Well, hasn't the mayor done that? Haven't you addressed and
We've
put some funds
established the
towards it?
account, and we started putting a small amount, a modest amount, a representative amount of money into that trust. Pretty much symbolic, Dan. But the fact
Sounds
of
like
the-
you guys are agreeing on this point.
Well, let's face it. If it's a mandated thing, you've got to do it. However,
Do you
know,
think Pittsfield will reach a point where it has to look into a renegotiation of promises made to pensioners at some point?
Well, first of all,
You're a
I don't think
finance
this is not going to affect the pensioners. You know, we will still have
the retirees.
enough money. We have a retirement.
OPEB is outside of pensions, right?
Right, exactly. But they want us to be able to define what that liability is, what that exposure is.
Do we know what it is right now?
It is significant. I don't off the top of my head, but it is significant. And to think that any municipality is going to be able to achieve that with all of the other mandates, we're looking at a need to do something with our affluent discharges. That's something that the Mayor's Associations nationally are talking about that would be somewhere in the neighborhood of $45 million. There are so many mandates that it would just cripple any city. So we can address that, but I think we have to recognize that it would be on the backs of the taxpayers. We have a schedule for meeting the retirement obligation, and we meet that every year.
Does the situation, the last I heard, the Massachusetts Taxpayers Association used a figure that with the pension obligations and the OPEB costs, this was in 2011, it was $332 million. Does that suggest, this will be a toss-up for both of you, does Pittsfield have a spending problem? Each year the budget goes up, 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 up. The tax base seems to be shrinking. Do we have a spending problem? Do we have to rein in the amount that we are spending?
Well, I think that one of the things that's very important to do is to, especially,
can you tell us yes or no? Do
we have a spending problem?
Do we have are we spending too much based on what we're receiving from taxes and all of that?
I don't believe we are. I think that what we need to be doing is establishing new priorities. That's the thing that I'm most interested in doing. I think that one of the things that's happening in terms of liabilities and managing liabilities is that what you may not know is that when Mayor Bianchi goes out for borrowing for capital projects, he will often borrow more money than is needed, and will take the extra money that's borrowed and put that into operating expenses or into free cash. And that is a borrowing liability.
You're suggesting a switcheroo, Dan.
That borrowing liability has to be paid for by future generations.
First of all, you're saying two different things, and you're contradicting yourself. On one hand, you're saying that we are not spending foolishly.
I'm talking about liabilities.
Liability. But on the other hand, you've suggested to me that I've been irresponsible fiscally, that we've increased our budget by 18 million, which is wrong. Maybe Councilor Claremont can
I
check
can
his
add.
figures.
I can
But,
add, Mayor.
We've increased the budget over the last 4 years by $15.8 million. So that is approximately a 2.5% increase every year. You've suggested, and you somehow tied that to a consumer price index and suggested that we should keep towards the inflation rate or the consumer price index rate. And I guess I would ask the question, you know, how do you make a comparison or draw a correlation between the consumer price index or the inflation rate with a municipal budget and how we develop that budget?
My comparison was in regard to the increase to the tax rate and how it has increased more than twice the rate of inflation. And I think that for people who are living and trying to be within their budget means, their personal budgets, they have oftentimes struggled with these tax rate increases. And I do believe that we have not had the right priorities. I think we have spent money on things that are not in the best interest of the city of Pittsfield. I've outlined those. Such as we didn't need to spend $100,000 to repair City Hall floors. We could have used that money
$100,000
to hire police officers to address the needs of our city.
First of
we
all,
didn't have to move people out of City Hall with it, where we had a fixed expense. We could have invested money in improving the condition of City Hall and kept our employees all together,
Linda,
right in our building.
Linda, you know, we don't run a Sophie's Choice game here. You know, good service to people who invest millions of dollars in our community is something that we talk about, but we don't do. That was a wise investment. And you're suggesting that 100,000, which represents about 1/100% of our city budget, should have been spent elsewhere.
It's still money that could have been used for police officers or for repairing broken fire apparatus.
Once again, we have to prioritize, and to say that because we spent that, we didn't hire police officers is inaccurate and irresponsible. I would say to you, of the $15.8 million in the budget that has increased over the last 4 years, what would you have cut out of that?
I'm not saying that I would have. I'm not even saying that I would have cut anything. I am saying that I would have had different priorities. That's what I am saying.
But you wouldn't have cut. Well, I guess I'm suggesting to you, if you think that we should stick to the consumer price index as a measurement, and that is the increase is represented by 15.8, you know, do you know what those increases represented?
As I said, I would have different priorities.
Well, the 15.
Can you give it like, Linda? I'll get back into my seat here, but where has the mayor, in your view, misplaced a priority, misfunded a program? Where would you put money that he didn't?
Well,
just give me one example.
I really believe strongly that in these modern times that we must have a robust police department. I would be establishing that as a priority.
Is it
and
achievable?
When you create a priority, I think it is achievable. It has to be strategic.
Where would the money come from?
It has to be phased in. Well, for example, we could use a portion of the $500,000 that we budget annually for overtime to reallocate that resource to hire police officers rather than paying overtime, which is paid at a rate of time and a half. That's one avenue of finding resources to hire police officers.
Would you go as far as to make an absolute promise that you are going to add to the police force?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe
can that
it's
be done
necessary.
the way she says?
She has suggested that we should have 120 police officers. That's a 27 officer increase. Almost impossible, given that we are a civil service. We would wipe out the civil service list. What we have to do is we have to get up to the numbers that are already authorized, and that's 93. But to suggest that you're going to add 27 police officers, that's an additional $2 million. And as far as you know, taking from overtime, those police officers have special assignments. They're expected to do that. I received a flyer in the mail today that said she would establish an anti-gang unit. Well, we had an anti-gang unit. We enhanced that by making an anti-crime unit. And Sergeant Decker does a tremendous job managing those,
let me ask you about,
officers.
I'm glad you mentioned crime, because I want to ask you about a couple of specific cases. One occurred in your first year, about 6 months in. The second occurred as recently as last week. The first one was the theft of $10,000 of prom money from Pittsfield High School. It was in 2012. And there was, as far as I know, no arrest, no prosecution. Some PHS alums chipped in the money so they could have a prom, but the theft itself went away.
Well,
do you know anything about that case?
That was investigated by the police department.
What was
Whether or not, honestly, Dan, 3 years ago, I don't recall. All I can tell you is that when we notice anything like that in City Hall, and I don't know the details of that, but I do know the details of other things that we have found to be breaking the law. We had a custodian in that situation, and he was let go. We had some
DPW people.
What I would like
we had three
what
DPW,
I would like to say about
we
this.
had 3 DPW personnel.
Yeah, Linda.
I would like to say that regarding the custodian who was found stealing money, it was from my department. And because I had implemented some very stringent auditing internal controls, we knew within 2 days that someone was stealing money from our vault. And I believe that that is an example of the hard work that I will do for the city of Pittsfield. In my department, we handle a lot of cash transactions. So I created auditing internal controls and streamlined the process so that the minute that there was $1 missing, we knew it, and we contacted the police immediately, and we engaged in an investigation that resulted in the person being caught.
You know, that case at PHS was an example of money had been raised. It was cash in a locked drawer. Had you heard Mayor Bianchi of this being at all an inside job, or do you have any knowledge of that? Or maybe I should say, do you understand people's frustration when they see a crime like this?
Absolutely. And when
so
something
it just goes away?
When something like that happens, Dan, people have to be held responsible.
But who was?
Well, once again, I don't know the details of that. That was 3 years ago.
Did you talk to, I think it was then Trevor Benson.
Trevor Benson and the then superintendent were handling it.
And he then went off to Better Horizons
right
after that semester. Just another coincidence.
No. I don't. You can't connect the two.
Okay.
But all I can say, Dan, is we're very diligent about that. We're not going to allow people to do that sort of thing.
Well, it already happened once.
Well, that happened 3 years ago, and it happened under the jurisdiction of the school department.
Well, let's get more recent.
Sure.
The recent incident at Herberg Middle School with the gun.
Yep.
Now, here's something that I've struggled with, and Linda, feel free to join the discussion, but initially the press release was issued by your office, and it turned out to be authored by the school superintendent. So I'm just wondering procedurally, how can the school superintendent have franking privileges of information sent by your office? And when this misinformation came out, he basically said, oh, the gun wasn't loaded, no harm, no foul, and that turned out not to be the case.
Dan,
how could that happen?
Things happen, Dan, but let me explain, the incident. I got a call, my office was told by the superintendent's office that there was a gun found at Herberg Middle School. I immediately went down there, went into the principal's office, and was told that there was an incident, that the child had already been taken away by the police department, as had been the weapon.
So when you got there, the kid who allegedly did this was not?
He was already taken away by the police department.
Did they tell you what kind of a gun it was?
They said it was a handgun. They didn't talk about the caliber, but when
do you want to know?
Do I want to know?
I would like to know if it was a handgun, whether it was a BB gun or a 9mm Glock.
No, it was a handgun. I'm not going to say any more, and it wasn't a recreational. It was not a child's toy.
But do you know more?
It was the real. Yes, I do.
Can you share that with us?
I can't.
Why can't we know that?
Well, there is an investigation going on by the district attorney's office. And we've been advised that there's a certain amount of information you should tell and not. Now, when we got together with the teachers, and there was some 100 staff members in the library, and they asked point blank, "What did you find?" I told them, a handgun.
Okay.
You know, it was never indicated it was a BB gun. It was a handgun.
Another question came
Sure.
up. Why would the and I know Counselor Connell showed up and you
Yeah.
arrived at the scene, but had the investigation been completed? Some
Oh,
were
my
talking.
God, the investigation is
Okay.
probably still going on, Dan.
Okay, was there any possibility that evidence was tainted? Was the crime scene, if there was a crime, was it secure, as far as you know?
The crime scene was a child's locker. The
Okay.
weapon was taken along with the bag, and it left. We had a meeting with the teachers and the staff, and we described what we knew.
Did you hear anything about this student who was alleged to have done this had come to the attention of the school prior to this, a little bit earlier, with another incident not involving a gun but a weapon?
I don't recall that. No,
Okay.
not a weapon.
Linda, do you have a comment on this, on what I've been calling Gungate?
Well, I do think that the misstep with the press release certainly created some confusion and elevated the anxiety for the parents and the families that were trying to understand exactly what was going on. And I think that there is an important distinction between a handgun in a middle school that isn't loaded and a loaded handgun. Certainly a loaded handgun has the potential to be used in tragic results. An unloaded handgun, while still dangerous and very serious, there is a greater chance that tragedy can be averted when when the gun is not loaded. You know, this is a very serious incident, and the people of Pittsfield expect the school community, the law enforcement community, and their leadership
Would you
to take
give
this
a
seriously.
grade to the mayor's performance in handling this and the school superintendent's?
I believe that the school community has handled this exactly the way that they should have.
What grade would you give Dr. McCandless?
I
for
think
this?
that Dr. McCandless has done an excellent job in
Even with the
communicating-
misinformation that he let out there?
I don't know what is the story, but with the misinformation, it's still confusing to me about who is responsible for misinforming the public.
Would you like to know?
However,
I'd be more than happy to
what
ta-
I would say is that it's important when these kinds of serious incidents occur. It's very important that everyone understand the facts of the situation, that there's very clear communication happening between all of the parties, so that when information is released, it's solid and it's accurate. That's the most important lesson, one of the most important lessons to be learned from this experience.
And the information that the superintendent had was that it was a handgun with a full clip, loaded clip, next to the handgun. That's what we knew. And the important thing was, you know, you're talking about...
That was inaccurate.
Well, apparently it was in the gun, and that was...
Well, was it? I mean, it sounded like they were sure that the gun had a clip with bullets locked and loaded, basically.
Yeah, well, that's the case. But what we were told that it was a clip next to the pistol, or
told
that's
you
what
that?
the superintendent told me, and he indicated
do you know where
that
he
the
got
staff
his
told
information?
him.
And the staff told him, and who
Right.
told us?
Well, the staff being the principal. But
Just sound like a lot
you know,
of miscommunication.
once again, you have to remember, they were trying to communicate information to all of the parents in the school system. And as far as I'm concerned, you know, a gun with a clip, for anybody who's ever handled a handgun, knows that it takes 1.5 seconds to load a pistol. So it was a dangerous situation. The priority was communicating the situation with the information that the superintendent had clearly to the parents.
Would you back off your previous statement? I think you said in another forum that there's no, and I'm paraphrasing, but there's not much of a difference between a gun with a clip. Is that what you mean? It would only take 1.5 seconds?
Dan, I spent 2 months in an arms room. It doesn't take long to arm a pistol.
Okay, so You stand by that statement?
That it doesn't take long to arm a pistol?
Well,
yeah.
there's no difference between that and a loaded gun.
As far as I'm concerned, it was equally dangerous. It was equally dangerous.
Okay, but that's not what you said before.
What's that?
It sounded like you said there was a big difference between having a gun with a clip on the side with bullets.
It wasn't a big difference. I've
Okay.
never said there was a big difference.
Okay.
Absolutely not. There was a dangerous situation, and the staff handled the protocol perfectly, perfectly. And you know, we had a meeting with probably about 100 parents on Friday evening, and you know, one of the parents that first spoke said she was so glad that there was a relationship of trust to have allowed it to work that way.
Do you know, and just the behavior of the Herberg principal, Gina Coleman, during the incident, had either of you, and I guess since you're the mayor, Dan, have you heard any reports that would indicate that she acted in a way other than she should have?
No, not at all. I think
Okay.
she did. I think because the outcome ended the way it did, and it ended, you know, unfortunate situation ended successfully, Dan. You know, I can only conclude that the staff, from the principal on down, acted appropriately, swiftly. The resource officer acted the way he was supposed to, and the outcome ended without a tragedy.
Linda, do you know how, when you say you would not make cuts to the budget, do you know how that's being viewed out there to folks who have no discretionary income to speak of, who are trying to make ends meet, that are working 2-3 jobs to piece together a living, and you're telling them basically no change? You've proposed program after program that will require funding from somewhere. It's not adding up for the little guy. What do you say to Mary Jane and Joe Kopinski, who are out there saying, you know, she's going to nail us to the wall?
I appreciate the opportunity to elaborate.
You know, when they say that, they never appreciate it.
I appreciate the opportunity to elaborate on my plans.
Okay, you'd be the first.
You know, certainly we have a lot of challenges here in the city of Pittsfield, and my goal is to reprioritize how we use our limited resources.
How are you going to help them, though, they have to make a decision? Am I going to heat the house? Am I going to buy food?
Right.
Am I going to take care of my prescription medicines?
Government has a responsibility.
How are you going to help them?
Government has a responsibility to provide public safety and security, so police and law enforcement, fire safety and protective services, public education.
We're doing that now?
Those are the obligations that we have here in the city.
Are we not doing that?
We help people by keeping our city safe, improving public safety. I do think that we have work to do in terms of keeping our fire department with adequate equipment that isn't broken. I think the people of Pittsfield expect that. They expect a public works department that delivers services.
They're getting those services now, Linda. How is that going to translate into their daily life? That's what I want to know.
It does translate into their daily life because it provides for them a quality of life that they expect and deserve. When they have law enforcement protecting them, when they have public services that are delivered in a
what if they don't have jobs to go to?
Well, that's a different conversation, creating jobs.
Well, is it?
Yes,
I mean, jobs is
certainly
one thing, but we're talking about spending.
Well,
if I could continue to answer the question, I haven't been given enough time to answer my question.
I want to hear from the mayor on
Well,
this.
I believe that what we are going to need to do.
Let the mayor talk.
You know, you've got to say something. You know.
I'm trying to.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you.
I'm going to step back and I'm going to let you guys hash this out then.
The thing is,
have a discussion.
You know, you can say you can you change your priorities, but you have an array of services that have to be met: educational, public safety, economic development. And when you say that you're going to add 27 patrol officers, when you say that you're going to invest in a cure violence program that's used in Syria and Baghdad, when you start adding all those up, you know, I can only conclude that you're doing it either for votes or, you know, you really don't have a plan. But something is going to suffer if you are going to keep the budget not going any higher than the consumer price index. It's just unrealistic. And I agree with Dan. you've got to be honest with the taxpayers. I have never suggested to the taxpayers that we're going to be able to cut their tax rate. We can control their tax rate. We can operate professionally and prudently, but to suggest wild changes in the level of service from one place to another and then justify it by, well, we're going to prioritize, that makes no sense.
It is the role of the mayor to set a vision for what the future of Pittsfield looks like. It is the role of the department heads, including the Director of Finance and Administration, the Director of Public Works, the Chief of Police, to work with the mayor to establish how do we meet this vision. Now, you continue to say that I'm going to hire 27 new police officers, which is a misrepresentation of what I've said. I have used a comparison.
You said we should
Mayor,
have 120
I have the floor.
officers.
Would you let me finish speaking, please?
I think
have
we both
the floor.
have the floor. You have
we
said 120 police
I have
officers,
used that as
which
a
is
comparison
27 more
to
than what we have
highlight
now.
how we have too few police officers. I have used it as a comparison. What I have said repeatedly over the course of this campaign is that my intention is to examine the law enforcement community and strategically plan over the course of 4 or 5 years how we will hire more police officers. I will certainly be taking this very seriously. We cannot continue to have a city that is not protected in a manner that provides good public safety. Everyone in the city that I talk to from the beginning of my campaign until today, their main concern and the greatest threat to our community is crime and violence. And I intend to set that as a priority as part of a new leadership.
You have been
in addition to that,
fear-mongering.
No, Mayor, it is not fear-mongering. People are living it and seeing it day to day. It is their reality.
Tell us about your Cure
I'd be
Violence
happy to tell you about Cure Violence.
Go right ahead.
Cure Violence is a program that complements law enforcement by taking the aspects of violence and making it a public health initiative. Now I am confident that through a variety of sources, grants, private investment, we can create a robust plan for how we can address public safety in a very real way. Law enforcement is one aspect of it. Addressing the underlying conditions is the other aspect. We need to get real about crime, and we need to get real about poverty. And we need to understand that people are disconnected when young men and women are disconnected from their communities, from their families and their neighbors. They are prone
available for Cure Violence.
That's just not true, Mayor.
It is absolutely true.
It's not true.
Have you talked to anybody at the Cure Violence program? The company that runs it. Have you talked to anybody?
Well, we can raise grants through other resources.
Have you talked to anybody there?
I have, yes.
Who?
I don't have the name with me.
Okay. Well, the executive director of the Cure Violence program has said flat out, that program makes no sense for the city of Pittsfield. There is a community in South America, in Colombia, where they have 300 drug deaths, shootings a year. Syria, Baghdad. You are duplicating. You are going to impose upon the taxpayer over $1 million for a program that I've already established, that I've raised nearly $300,000. The state is paying us for a program you're suggesting we should invest over $1 million.
It's not the same initiative. It is not the same. It is a complement.
Then you haven't done your homework. You have got to look at that program.
I think what is unfortunate is that you're not willing to take a bold step to addressing these very serious issues.
I am not willing to take a bold stumble and have the taxpayers pick us up. And that's exactly what that would be.
I never suggested that taxpayers would pay for it. I have suggested that we seek funding from a variety of sources. Cure Violence, they don't care how they get paid.
That's right, but they demand to get paid.
If we pull together a variety of resources, then we can implement the program.
Did you ask them if there are grants available?
I'm not asking for them to give us a grant.
Okay.
I am seeking state grants, local grants, private funding.
And the fact of the matter is, we have a nationally recognized program that as soon as I got in the office, I called the Department of Public Safety, and I asked them, is there anything we can do to address gang violence and crime as it exists in our city? They suggested that we apply for the Shannon Grant program. We did exactly that. We had 3 days to apply for it. We applied for it. We have had funding increases each and every year.
That's because we've had crime increase. Crime has increased. We weren't even eligible for the Shannon Grant for a number of years. It was only when we met. It was only when crime began to increase that we became eligible for the Shannon Grant.
We have received nearly $300,000 from a great program. That, by the way, the implementation of that program, the Department of Public Safety has suggested to us we are head and shoulders above any other community in the development and the effectiveness of that program. So much so that we've applied for an additional grant to start addressing not just the teenagers, but young adults. And we're very confident. We've been invited to go to Boston next week because they are going to be announcing another grant round, and we are in line for $1.5 million. So I have been able to secure the grants that you're suggesting we should pay a private company.
This grant that you've just referenced, you know that this is a competitive grant.
It is a competitive grant,
you know
we've been meeting the competition.
By discussing it publicly, that you put at risk our ability to win that competitive grant.
Absolutely not.
What
do you think the city of Springfield or Worcester is watching the PCTV?
Well, I just think that you and I both know that this is something that's still in the competitive stages, and the discussing it publicly will put our winning of this grant at risk.
That's an absolutely foolish statement.
Okay.
And we'll see next week.
Right. Let me.
Dan's back.
Let me step back in here. I've shed my coat, as you can see. Anyways, we can talk about jobs and what you would do to get jobs. I'm not even sure that the mayor is responsible for that. I don't know what the mayor directly does, but certainly indirectly. But let's talk about jobs lost and the news that SABIC is pulling out its headquarters. By June, it will be relocating to Houston. And I had an email that, if I can locate it, and I just wanted to share with you. Okay. This was today, and we were deluged. So, folks, I'm not going to get to all of your questions, but here was one that stood out. Talking about the little guy again. The little guy wants unwavering leadership, accountability, and transparency. Since when does a mayor feel so unexpendable, I'm not sure that's a word, but irreplaceable, that he can control every facet of information from the cities? That little guy doesn't want a finger pointer. Now he gets to SABIC. The little guy wants to hear that losing 300 jobs at SABIC is a game changer for the city and the taxpayers. It will impact the financial demographics substantially. The fallout is huge. The Taconic High School project is becoming a bigger sword of contention as a result. A study by a Williams College economics professor suggests that the total job loss will be 500 jobs, and anywhere from $166 million a year to $200 million. So over 5 years, if you take the high figure, that's $1 billion. How serious is this loss? And were you in contact with SABIC, and did you know this was coming down? Had you met with them regularly? Did you know this was on the way?
I have somebody from the SABIC board or not the SABIC board, the personnel office of SABIC, head of human resources, is on the PETA board.
Who is that?
And that is Patrick Royce. And they keep their information quite close to the vest. And actually, at the Pittsfield level, there were very few people that knew. I talked to somebody from General Electric, and they were taken by surprise because they still own
Did you find out when we all found out?
I found out just before they made the announcement. And as a matter of fact, if you talk to the people from SABIC, They will tell you that you know, they kept this information very tight. The employees didn't know. Many of the employees still don't know the
Well, there were
ramifications.
rumors out there. I could go back to the Planet, and 6 months ago,
Oh, absolutely, Dan.
I said this was
there
coming.
There are rumors, but when I made
I'm
the
not
inquiry,
a prophet, but I was proven right.
When I made the inquiries, you know, it was, well, you know, we don't have anything to say.
Could the mayor have done something to, I'm not saying prevent this, I don't know what the mayor could have done. Linda?
Yeah.
Well, I think that it is critical for the mayor of the city of Pittsfield to have regular interactions on a regular basis with the executives of the major employers here in the city of Pittsfield, so that we have our finger on the pulse of what is going on with our major employers. And I do think that this was a fairly well-known circumstance, that SABIC was in the process of having conversations about leaving Pittsfield. Many of the employers knew about it. I think that if I had been getting information, if I were the mayor and I'd been receiving information, first of all, I would have had solid relationships and regular communication with these executives. But the minute I would have heard even the first rumor, I would have picked up the phone, gotten in the car, knocked on their door, asked them to help me understand what was going on, and is there something, anything at all, that the city of Pittsfield can do to help retain jobs here in Pittsfield. There may be some unique opportunities to provide support to these companies. I understand that SABIC is a multinational company and that they make their decisions without much regard for the city of Pittsfield. But the employees and the families of SABIC are Pittsfield people, and I think we need to be fighting for them.
How serious a blow would you say this is?
I think it's, you know, it's, I understand and I respect the economics professor up at Williams College, and it can be significant. But we know right now, and I've talked to the head of human resources over at General Dynamics, who has said, she said that they have about 90 jobs. They're highly technical jobs. There may very well be people over there that, in fact, can transfer. So that is going to lessen the impact. For those people who are going to Houston,
would you concede, though, and this is for both of you, that there's no silver lining in this? It's bad stuff.
You know, you say that, but there was an employer from South County who's in the technical plastics. Covestra is the name of the company. They're a division of Bayer. And they called up and they said that they have been trying to get information too, because they have several openings. And they think that there are people there that they could recruit. And they asked whether or not I could possibly reach out, which I have.
What do you think is going to happen to the, Linda?
Well, I just would like to say that, you know, it's certainly hopeful that some of the people who are facing job loss may have an opportunity to stay local and find employment with another company. I think what's happening, though, to the employees right now is that they've been asked to basically sign something stating that they would be willing to go to Houston. And all of this is essentially being put into a lottery system, and right at this moment, the families are undecided about their future. This is affecting them on a personal level, but from the city's perspective, the long-term consequences of this are significant. This will affect property values here in the city of Pittsfield. We will now have a market that's flooded with more vacant houses, and we will have challenges with selling those houses unless we recruit new job opportunities here. This will affect our ability to have solid tax revenue to pay for the things that are important to the people of Pittsfield. So this does have a significant impact, long-term consequence to the city of Pittsfield. And it's important to support and empathize the families, and I hope for their great success, but the long-term consequences to our city cannot be underestimated.
If the dire consequences that were just described come to reality, all the more reason to have somebody with qualifications, with training, with an understanding of business to be managing the city at this time. But the fact of the matter is, we have to look at unique ways. We keep talking about bold steps.
Are you suggesting that if your opponent got in, would she be in over her head, in your view?
I think that people have to look at qualifications. I think she's, even if Sabic stayed, she would be over her head. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful.
Qualifications do matter, but so do results. And I have a long list of accomplishments that I'm very proud of, and I believe that I have the right qualifications to lead the city of Pittsfield. I may not have the standard resume, and we can recite resume qualifications all night long, but I believe that I have a record of accomplishment that has prepared me for this job,
Okay,
and
let me
I'm
step
ready
back.
to serve.
Let me step back.
I think it's important, Dan, to get back to what we are doing. It emphasizes the business model that we put together for the Innovation Center. It is more important now than it ever has been. And the events at Sabic make it so.
Will you take credit for that, or was that Jim Roberto's initiative?
Jim Roberto's initiative was to have a 2-page letter written and to have a rendering of a building.
But didn't Chris Branzo get the first $600,000?
Got an earmark, and an earmark is nothing more than a very loose promise from the state.
So you justifiably, in your view, can take the lion's share of credit for getting this through? Yes or no?
I think, yeah, well,
okay.
Yes, if you want. And I think if you ask anybody on the BIC board, they'll tell you the same thing. And they
Linda, how do you respond? We're getting pressed a little bit for time.
Well, I think that this certainly was a collaboration of efforts, that Mayor Bianchi could not have done this all by himself. This was a collaboration of efforts, and I think that the money was secured by our Berkshire delegation many long years ago. I think that that the proposal that's in place is a unique concept. However, I think that for the city of Pittsfield, I'm going to be looking at what opportunities do we have to create new jobs, and what opportunities are before us to create new tax revenue.
Okay, I'm going to jump in.
I want to get. I've got to clarify because this is too important, Dan. And job creation is something that we shouldn't just brush over. And I wish we had more time, but. You know, and I appreciate my opponent suggesting that I was capable of being involved in a collaborative effort, but it did. It took a group of business people putting together a real proposal, not just you know, a superfluous proposal. We put together a proposal and a business plan, but we also secured about 6 research institutions and a group of companies that said this business plan makes ultimate sense, and we're going to be able to grow and add 10, 15, 20 employees in each of these companies because of what we're doing.
Okay,
and the state agreed. We're
going to grant the point, and I want to give you a minute to close up, but not right now. But I'll give you an opportunity to address to your opponent any misstatements of your position, any outright fabrications or lies that you would wish to confront face to face. If either of you wish to do that right now, I would be glad to let you do that.
Okay, well, I guess I would like to, if I may, ask Mayor Bianchi a little bit more specifically about the William Stanley Business Park. Mm-hmm. And I believe that you have stated many times over the course of this campaign that you believe the William Stanley Business Park should be preserved for advanced manufacturing jobs, and that the mixed-use component of building out the William Stanley Business Park is not something that's of interest to you. Have I understood that correctly?
Well, let me just tell you what my position is, crystal clear. When I got on the board of the PETA board, which my opponent has said she would not be on that,
That's correct.
Which I think is just totally irresponsible. If I had not been on that board, I guarantee you there would be a big box store on the William Stanley Business Park right now. And the chair, Gary Grunin, a supporter of my opponent, has suggested that when I got on, he showed me plans for the William Stanley Business Park, and he said, I hope you're as excited about this as I am. And I said, Gary, I am, but for a much different reason. I said, industrially zoned land is unique. It's like waterfront property. We don't have much of it. The master plan suggests that we should use property appropriately to the best economic advantage. And if we have to level that area there and wait for us to grow. We had a public meeting, which I insisted upon. We had 36 people speak. 34 said that it should be a higher purpose. And those people included...
Would you oppose a big box? Would you
On that
oppose?
site, I'll be more than happy to find another site somewhere else, but not on that site.
All right, we're going to give you each a minute here.
But then do you
Linda?
support this new concept of an inflatable
word.
dome at the PETA, at the William
You guys
Stanley
want to
Business
forego
Park?
your minute, or
No, I don't want to forego my minute, no.
let's have your minute right now. We'll start with Linda Tyer. 1 minute, please.
Closing statement at this point?
Closing
Thank
statement.
you very much. Thank you for hosting this evening, Dan.
It's my
It's been a
pleasure.
privilege to once again present to the people of Pittsfield the distinctions between Mayor Bianchi and myself. I believe over the course of this campaign I have offered many new ideas and initiatives for making our city ready for the next generation Pittsfield, including how to attract and retain jobs and how to improve public safety and how are we going to better deliver public works services. I look forward to the privilege of serving. We have a lot of challenges, but I believe with hard work and determination, we can make Pittsfield a great place to live and work. Thank you very much.
Appreciate that. And Dan Bianchi, a minute to close.
Okay, Dan, thank you so much. I would urge the public to look at our resumes, look at our qualifications, and ask yourself, if I had a business, a $150 million family business, who would I trust? Who would I trust to be fiscally responsible to run that business? I've been endorsed by Congressman Neal, by State Committee Woman Mary O'Brien, by Sheriff Bowler, by Fran Marinero, the probate head. I've been endorsed by people who trust me. And that's what everyone, you have to ask. Who do you trust to be able to manage this city? Who do you trust to be able to control expenses? Who do you trust to take a realistic approach to delivering education, economic development, public safety? And who do you trust to be a role model for the 6,000 kids in our public school system and the young families in our community? And I hope you'll take that examination, and I hope you'll give me 4 more years as your mayor. Thank you so much.
Well, with that, thank you, Dan Bianchi. Thank you, Linda Tyer. And we are going to close up right now. Who Do You Trust was the name of a game show, and we're going to find out the answer to that question on Tuesday. And I'm sure, one thing that I think we can all agree on is that we do hope for good weather and good turnout on that day. And then we'll see where it shakes out. Once again, thanks to our candidates. Thanks for all of the volunteer crew for coming in and doing this tonight. And we will be back next week, same time, same station, Planet Valenti Television, and tomorrow on the web at planetvalenti.com. On behalf of Dan Bianchi, Linda Tyer, Dan Valenti saying so long, everybody.